The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Laurel Tague. Welcome, everybody, to Epic Voyages on InceptionRadioNetwork.com tonight. We've got stiff competition tonight. I know there's the presidential debates. There's game number 7 in baseball, and there's a football game going on. But we welcome all of you who decided to tune in with us, and we've got a really exciting, interesting show tonight. We're going to be talking to Joe Taylor. Joe Taylor is a fellow Texan, and by the way, if you've been listening to Jerry Pippin before this show, you know that this is Texas Night. He was talking to Borderland Symposium folks down there along the Rio Grande. But Joe is the owner and the curator of the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum. He's associate, and he also has an associated publishing company. When he was a young guy, he left West Texas. I don't know why, but he came back, but he left West Texas for New York City and Los Angeles, and he actually wound up in art school and started a career in commercial illustration and advertising design. While he was doing this, he wound up in Los Angeles volunteering at the Brea Tar Pits, and that's where he became infected with fossils. He accessed actually a saber-toothed cat skull, which he wound up reproducing, and Joe, we're going to ask you about that a little later. And his interest was sparked by rich local fossil deposits and a desire to find out the truth about fossils. His museum in Mount Blanco, by the way, which is about 30 miles or so to the east of Lubbock, up near the Panhandle, but not quite in it, in Texas, has, oh my gosh, Joe, I don't know if hundreds is the right word, but he's got skeletons and remains and fossils and artifacts, human and animal, from who knows how many thousands of years back. It's well worth the trip. Joe is one of the nation's foremost fossil restorationists, and his work is sought out by individuals, museums, and other institutions all over the U.S. and abroad. And by the way, he's coming to us not from Texas tonight, but from Oklahoma, where he just delivered a cast of a stegosaurus that he worked on. He'll tell us about that a little bit, too. What we're going to talk about tonight is his new book, Giants Against Evolution. It's about 200 pages with tons and tons of photographs and illustrations, and half of it is about human remains, and the other half is about giant animal remains. So, Joe, welcome to Epic Voyages. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, except for the allergies, but other than that, I'm fine. Thank you.
You travel and you take your allergies with you.
Well, shoot, yeah. You know, they're me. People wouldn't know it was me if I didn't clear my throat every 3 minutes.
Tell everybody about this stegosaur that you sculpted and took up to Oklahoma today.
Well, I started work on it 2 years ago and sculpted it, then I had to do these huge industrial molds of it and cast it. We just finished up the cast here a few weeks ago, got the metal inside, then I painted it, and we clear coated it so it could be outdoors like a car. It's 12 feet tall, 25 feet long. It's one of the biggest ones, and it's based on the parts that we know about that we had in a quarry there. We were digging in Colorado on the western slopes there near Dinosaur, Colorado. And there was a quarry there of at least 12 animals, including crocodiles, fish, turtles, and a baby dinosaur about 2 feet tall, and this stegosaur, maybe 2 stegosaurs. One of the plates had 2 holes in it about the size of your little finger, and I reproduced those in the cast. Just, I don't know why they're there. Either another stegosaur hit it with his spikes, or a big allosaur bit it, or a crocodile bit it, or something. But apparently it wasn't fatal.
So these were like puncture marks.
Yeah.
Okay.
They all the way through the bone. This thing has 24 plates on it. The tallest ones are nearly 4 feet tall. Ooh. And they're all socketed. The thing itself is, if you're going to paint it, each side is equal to the mass of a big van. Oh. And then the plates themselves, the surface that I had to paint on those, are equal to a side and a half of a van. So a lot of work. The skin is textured. The skin itself, the body skin, is just speculation, but it's sort of a rosette pattern. A lot of dinosaurs that we have skin of had a rosette pattern with a single bone in the middle and rosettes around it. Huh. So I just sort of borrowed that, and I also borrowed some aspects of chameleons, because they're a complicated color-changing animal, and this stegosaur is a very complicated animal. So I just thought, well, perhaps there was a little connection there. Maybe they could change their color too. So one side is on the red scale, and the other side's on the blue scale.
Interesting.
And it's they're herbivore, as far as we know. Has a beak. It has a head like a horse, but a beak like a turtle. And they're just a magnificent animal. And this was my coup d'etat, I guess. I've done a lot of sculpture, but never anything like this. This thing's enormous.
And he's going to live outside in Oklahoma. What's he doing there?
Well, he's on the corner of a guy's business who's sort of in the oil field, and he's going to have I sculpted a baby to go with it. And he'll have a sign there that says, "Which one do you think God took on the ark?" He wants people to believe there was an ark. He wants people to believe that they didn't have to take the big old ones on there. They're going to have to eat a lot and get mad and fight and die young or die soon. Take the babies on that are weaned, of course, makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And there's a little boy sitting on top of him, a little old-fashioned boy, looks like he could be in, Israel today or something, with a little tunic on. They're just sitting up there, having fun.
How funny.
It sounds far-fetched, but some of the stones dug up out of the graves in Lima, Peru, show men interacting with dinosaurs, and one of them shows a man riding a dinosaur with a bridle on it. So those were 1,000 years ago.
Now that's a good opportunity for me to toss in here your website. Joe's website, which has all kinds of information on it, is www.mountblanco, MTBLANCO.com, www.mountblanco.com. And what you were just discussing, that stone, Joe, isn't that from Ica? I don't know if I'm saying that right, Peru, because you actually have casts of that are available?
Yes, I do. There's 4 of them, but I had 3 originals and 1 cast that I reproduced, and they all show men interacting with dinosaurs. The first question, of course, you have to ask is, are they fake? And that question was asked years ago. Dr. Cabrera, who made a huge collection of about 10,000 of these things, started collecting them basically as payment for medical services for the poor people who would find them washed out in the draws or dig them up or whatever. But they'd bring all these things into him. Well, a lot of the stones from Ica, Peru is how they pronounce it, at least that I heard. They're part of the Incan Empire, but they call them the Ica. It's the town of Ica, and we suppose it's the Ica people, I guess. Mm-hmm. The Nazca people. There's several tribes there they know about. But these stones, I looked at hundreds and hundreds of them. Other people have done really, great work on it. There's always fakes of everything once there becomes a commercial market for it. But if you go back before there was a commercial market, they're still there. They collected for the Queen of Spain back 500 years ago. Oh. And if you've got one legitimate stone that shows a man interacting with a dinosaur, you've blown the whole theory of evolution. Because you can't have man and dinosaurs that are supposed to have been dead for 140 million years ago living together 1,000 years ago. But there you are, like it or leave it. But that's the facts, and that's all around the world too.
Yeah. You're pretty well traveled. Where have you been besides in this country? And I guess you've been down to Peru because that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I've been to Peru. I was in Israel, mostly across the United States. And if I get free of all this backlog of work, I intend to travel to quite a few places that I know. Well, for one, I know there are giant men there. I'm not sure the process to go about who you talk to. It's a difficult situation if there's political parties or the militaries are changing. You know, you got to be really careful in those countries because there's all kinds of things going on. It's the same way on Indian land. I know there are giant skeletons and human remains of giants on Indian land, but you can't just go there and dig it up. You know, and the Indian people have a little different culture than ours, and you know, you just have to learn that, and you can't just go because it's there to get it. But I know they're there, and I know there's some in Canada and Alaska, Mexico. Gosh, you know, I talked to a lady who knew the students who had dug up a 9-foot-tall man. They were out hiking, found a man 9 feet tall, dug him up, had him on the tables. I think the University of Mexico came in and said, "Okay, we'll take those. Goodbye." And that happens most of the time, you know.
Well, now that's one of my questions here. Before I start in on my questions, tell me how it is that you started out with art and music and somehow wound your way back around to archaeology and paleontology and all that. How did you get from where you started to where you are now?
Well, really, art opened the door. And I had done a bunch of painting, like my Sistine Chapel in this big mansion out on the beach in California, overlooking Bob Dylan's guitar-shaped swimming pool. Huh. And when I got through with it, I won't say anything about the folks, but they just decided they wouldn't pay me, and I said, "Yeah, well, you need to pay me." Well, they made my life pretty unhappy for a while. Gee. So I said, "That's it. I'm quitting art, and I'm going to become a paleontologist." And, you know, the creation movement was just getting going. There were just a few people, and none of them knew anything about bones they didn't dig. And I thought, you know, I can do that. I can dig this stuff up. I can fix it. So I just started working for the Brea Tar Pits, and these guys, there wasn't a Christian among them except me, and they were all atheists, evolutionists. Some of them were downright anti-Christian, and they'd let you know. But because I had a passion for the same thing they had a passion for knowledge and for these bones, and because I could reproduce bones, and well, in fact, I sculpted a buffalo bone. I restored the missing part of a buffalo bone. Took it in, and I thought they knew what it was. You know, I didn't even know what to color this clay stuff with, so I used blue dye and curry, which gave me the exact bone color, okay? Huh. The end is heavier, and I took it in, I showed these paleontologists, "Oh, hey, nice bone." And they were handling it like it was a real bone. Finally, one of them noticed the end was heavy, and for some reason it didn't smell the curry. And he said, "Is this that plastic stuff you're talking about?" I said, "Yeah, that's all fake right there." "Oh, man, you're dangerous." I mean, all the details there. So they said, "Yeah, this is what we've been trying to get in here all this time. Somebody can do this stuff." So at one point I said, I can't go back to school because I got all these kids I'm trying to raise. And do you think I could become a paleontologist without going back to school? They all said, "Yeah, we'll help you." So, okay. My atheist buddies there, you know. So they started giving me books.
That's what I call the spirit of collegiality. You don't run into that real often these days. Go ahead.
Well, and it really has a lot to do with mutual respect. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't cram my stuff down their throat, nor did they mine, but we, you know, had a mutual openness, and I wanted to know what they knew. Yeah. You know, if you, it's one thing to go in and say, "Hey, I like this, give it to me and goodbye." It's another thing if you become interested in someone's life, and we all have a life. Mm-hmm. We all have problems. We all have financial problems, marriage problems, kids problems. You know, and if you don't care about that other person's problems, you don't develop as deep a relationship. Mm-hmm. And maybe because I'm from Texas, that's just, you're supposed to do that. You know, you're supposed to care about that person, even if they're some heathen. You know, you care about them. Well, after a while, you know, they're your friend. They help you, even though they don't agree with what you believe. So, I began to get all these occasional papers that no one had ever read with fantastic information in there that, to me, completely exonerated the Bible. This is what I believe,
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened now for the last nearly 30 years that I've been in this stuff. The facts, and I'm not talking about evolution, I'm talking about facts. The facts about bones, where they're found, all this sort of thing, those things always agree with the Bible. But the evolution stuff and the speculative stuff like all these millions of years dates, uranium dates, carbon dates, all that stuff is basically interpreted however you want to. It's not hard science, although everybody thinks. Nuclear dates and carbon-14, oh man, that's mechanical. That is absolutely true. No, it really isn't absolutely true. And it's contradicted all the time, and we've been doing that sort of thing. But that's really how I got into it, and that's opened doors again because I would take stuff in, and they liked the way I prepped it. They liked the way I was, I'd take a partial bone. I was just as interested in the information that contained as it wasn't some glamorous skull. Because see, the fragments of bones, the inside of a bone, it's too bad a bone gets broken, but now you can see the inside information.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a wrecked car. You always wanted to know what was behind that fender. Well, when you wreck it now, it's like, oh, that's cool. Somebody designed that too. So if you're interested in information, especially technical information or detailed information, these guys love you.
Huh.
And,
you must have had you must have had a really good understanding already of anatomy.
Well, I did some, and I would ask questions. I would study. I would try to do due diligence and learn as much as I could. Occasionally, we'd be having a great talk with some PhD, and they thought I knew something. All of a sudden, I'd mispronounce some common Latin word, and they'd look at me like, "Wait a minute, are you a plant?"
Please.
Now, I'd be embarrassed, but then after that, I knew how the word was supposed to be pronounced, as we say at home.
Sure.
If you're embarrassed, you won't. If you're easily embarrassed, you won't get anywhere in life. It's like a good journalist has to get out and ask questions that may make somebody mad, but how else are you going to find out anything?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm a good
Sounds
question.
like you and I have pretty much the same philosophy. Well,
yeah,
let's this topic of giants. I don't know why, but I'm finding it so interesting because the thing that startles me is why have there been so few, if any, DNA analyses done on any? And I'm talking about specifically giant humans.
Mm-hmm,
now,
mm-hmm.
I know in Joe's book, he points out several places that many people have been trying to write off these 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-foot tall obviously human skeletal remains as if they were mastodons. Well, duh, wouldn't you think you'd be able to tell the difference between a mastodon with tusks and a human being with a rib cage? But that aside, what on earth why has no one been doing, especially since the 1800s and 1900s, DNA analysis? And Joe, I know in your book you mention a number of reasons why apparently people dig these things up and they just disappear. What are some of the reasons for that?
Well, first of all, giants, someone 12, 15 feet tall, I think most people know in the back of their mind whether an academic or an ordinary guy. They know that that's just too much for a normal human parent to produce. There must be something more to it. Everybody's heard about the fallen angels or these demons or aliens, UFOs. And there's a little light starts flickering back there that I wonder if there's a connection there. Well, the academic community, like I said before, is largely connected, largely peopled by atheists. So they have an agenda that wants to cover up anything which is going to agree with the Bible. And if you do DNA, and they must surely have done this on some of these remains because there are thousands of them been found. If they did the DNA and found out there was something really unusual, that they couldn't just say, oh, they're all acromegalyaks or like the Irishman Bernie. There was a strain there of this mutation that made this race of Irish tall, or this group of Irishmen tall. But there's there's too much there that would then prove, well, I guess David and Goliath is real. Well, if David and Goliath are real, then all the stuff about David being a type of Christ, and is the Bible really true, or were the Jews really, is that really their true history, and all this sort of thing comes up. Well, you get too much science in there that corroborates the Scripture, you've got a big problem. I've run into that now for 30 years. The science does agree with the Bible, but they'll immediately cry foul if it does. So if they did DNA test, I don't think they'd tell anybody. It'd have to be leaked out. And if they haven't, then shame on them. It's like the T-Rex up there, back in 98, I found these bones in a museum that looked to me like the T-Rex had skin on its hips. So I talked them out of a piece to have an electron scan. Sure enough, it had collagen filament in it. Well, that's soft tissue. That's not millions of years old. And not long after that, Mary Schweitzer found the T-Rex up there with red blood cells and soft tissue in it. She didn't find collagen, at least at that point. Well, okay, if you want to believe that stuff's millions of years old and laid out there in the dirt in South Dakota or Wyoming for 67 million years, come on. Nobody in their right mind believes that. But if they're trying to protect a degree or a lab or something, they may even go, well, I guess it's open to interpretation. I think the pressure is being put on some of these people to denounce it, say, I guess we just found slime. Well, no, you're not going to convince us. You already blew it. You told it, now we know it, and I've been sending bones out to a couple of labs now for quite a while, and they're going to look for soft tissue. They're going to do DNA analysis if they can. They're going to do C14 tests, and we'll publish the results, even if we don't agree with them.
Now, are those animal bones, or are they humans, or are they both?
I've sent some humans. We know there is a skull too big to fit into a 5-gallon bucket. That would be a man probably 12, 13, 14 feet tall. And, unfortunately, someone that would go raise maybe $10,000 and hawk their life to get it. Somebody else hears about it, comes along, that's got a lot of money, offers them 20. Well, the poor farmer is going to sell it, and that happens a lot. And just money talks. Yeah. Somebody's got something, and they're desperate, or somebody comes along with more money than they'll make in 10 years. Their wife is going to tell them, "Honey, sell that thing. Come on."
Yeah.
So. But the academic community has a vested interest in covering any information which corroborates the Bible. It shouldn't be that way. It is not scientific. It doesn't to a real scientist. It doesn't matter what his information agrees with or who it vindicates. He's a scientist. He's not supposed to care, right? He's supposed to just get the facts.
I thought that's what the word objective meant, but then I'm probably wrong about that.
Well, when I got into this in actually 1978, I guess, 1980, my impression of a scientist, especially a paleontologist, because we think of them as scientists, I thought, well, these guys are open-minded seekers of truth. They're just kind of pinheads and boring people, and then I found out half of them look like a hippie like me, and they drive sports cars. They like women. They play guitar, and they're really not, these boring guys after all. But there's money to protect. So anytime money gets involved, people are going to look the other way on stuff. And I was shocked to find out that they were just like everybody else. In fact, maybe they're even worse, because here they get the cover of being interested in just the truth, but they're suppressing the truth. So they're really, to me, it's a hypocritical thing. They ought to just say, "Look, I'm not a real scientist because I'm going to go tell you when my coin toss hits on heads." Okay? Oh wow, you hit a lot of heads. Well, that's not fair and that's not scientific. So,
well, since we were talking about some of the Indian territories, I know myself that there's a very well-known story about, is it Lovelock Cave?
Yep,
and
Lovelock.
the Paiutes. This is a story about, I guess, between 7 and 10 feet tall giant skeletons being found, some with red hair, inside a cave. And the Paiute have a tradition of how those people got there and that their people burned them and they were cannibalistic and all of this. One of the people in the chat room, Joe, has asked about the Hopi also have a traditional or an oral tradition about giants, don't they, who lived inside the earth?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and some of the stuff the Indians say, just like, oh man, that's just too wild. But if you'll just think for a second, well, is there a place inside the earth? Apparently, hell is inside the earth, and Abraham's bosom is supposedly in the earth. So, is there nowhere in the earth that there is something? Maybe there really is. Maybe what the Hopi are talking about is the abyss. You've heard about the abyss. When the demoniac of Gadara came out, cutting himself, his naked, he broke chains, and he's screaming, he's full of demons, comes up to Christ and said, he acknowledges he's the Son of God and all that, and says, don't send us into the abyss, because there were 2,000 of these guys in there, apparently. Jesus didn't say he was going to not send them into the abyss. He just sent them into a herd of pigs, and the pigs ran off a cliff into where? In the ocean, in the sea. Uh-huh. Well, apparently, in the sea, or somewhere down there, is the abyss, right? The abyss is like a deep thing. Uh-huh. So the Bible seems to talk about 3 places: Abraham's bosom, Sheol, the grave is in the earth, hell, and now the abyss. Well, maybe there's something to all of that. It just sounds so wild. It's like UFOs and Bigfoot. 10 years ago, you couldn't say anything about that, or people laugh you to scorn. Well, I don't really care anymore. So I'm willing to talk about it. And there's a lot of kooky stuff out there, yeah, but, in all smoke, there's a little fire. You just have to find the fire.
Yeah, but going back to the Hopi for a minute, I think if I'm remembering this correctly, they have a story about the ant people who protected them at some time and took them underground, and that's when the world flooded, and then they came back out. And recently I read that if you, in the Hopi language, if you look at the word ant and the word people or friends, those two words come together. Ant is Anu, and Naki is people, and Zechariah Sitchin and several people have talked about the Anunnaki, and here are the Hopi talking about the ant people, basically the same words in their own language. Ted, can you say a little bit about the red-headed giants that they found at Lovelock and the story that the Paiutes have?
Winnemucca's great-granddaughter or somebody, but I believe one of the Indian ladies out there wrote all this stuff down,